I need some traction. You need some traction.
Hey everyone, Lloyd Lobo here, co-founder at Boast AI. We're helping innovators change the world by automating access to government funding and all the resources they need to succeed. Today's Traction webinar is brought to you by Boast AI and Launch Academy in partnership with Founder Institute, Growth Blazers, BCF Ventures, and Lazaridis Institute. Super excited for today's session. One of my favorite companies, Superhuman's co-founder Vivek here with us. Superhuman has created viral evangelism experience for customers. Last year it says that $62 billion worth of business was lost due to poor customer service, up from 50% 2 years prior. So, customer experience is getting worse, it seems like it. And Vivek and his team at Superhuman have mastered something phenomenal, how to deliver a great customer experience. They've got raving fans and evangelists loving the product, and people are dying to get in and excited to learn all about the journey. Vivek, thanks for joining us for Traction. How are you today?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
And are you at the San Francisco office?
I am. Yeah. We have a company offsite later this week. So flew in from Austin, Texas, where I moved a few months ago.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in the process of moving to Austin as well, and I'm at a company offsite incidentally in Seattle. The house has taken more than a year to build, so hopefully December full time, and we'll catch up in person for sure. Awesome, Vivek. Before we dive into the questions and talk about your 4 pillars of great customer experiences, walk us through your background. How did you meet Rahul? How did you get to where you are today? Give us the backstory.
Sure. Yeah. So my career started at UC Berkeley. I was a chemical and nuclear engineering major. I stumbled into entrepreneurship by accidentally taking a class on the subject. I got hooked. I decided that's the path I wanted to go down. I lied to my South Asian parents that I needed to stay at school for another year because I missed some classes that were required for graduation, when in actuality I was squatting all these business classes and whatnot. And so my first company out of college, I got connected to this gentleman by the name of Warren Hoffman, building a reputation platform called Rapleaf. And so we went through various pivots as a company, and we ultimately pivoted into an ad tech company called LiveRamp. And so at that point, I knew we were about a 60, 70 person company doing low 8-figure ARR. And I knew there was going to be some outcome with the company. And so that ended up happening a few years later, and the company is now publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, now a $3-4 billion company at this point. So I got really lucky. My first company out of college. Started a second company that was a developer platform called Airseed. And I tried my hand at being CEO. I learned the importance of focusing on product market fit because I didn't with my second company. I assumed we were going to stumble into it like we did with my first company. And I learned the lesson the hard way, had little runway towards the end, and ultimately decided, okay, I need to shut down this company. And I carried that chip with me into Superhuman. And so the day after I decided to shut down the company, I reconnected with Rahul. I ran into him at an event in San Francisco. So we had known each other since 2010. His first company, Reportive, built this, was really kicked off the email extension ecosystem. They built this really cool widget. For the folks that don't know, they built this really cool widget on the right-hand side of Gmail that replaced the ads with the picture of the person you're emailing with, links to their social links, social profiles, context on who they are, etc. And my first company at the time, before it pivoted to become an ad tech company, powered the APIs and the data for Reportive. And so we had this professional relationship, and we were friends since 2010. And then he ended up selling his company to LinkedIn. I ended up doing my second company. And so we were in our respective black holes. And when we both emerged, we reconnected, and we didn't miss a beat in terms of our friendship. And so over the next 2 weeks that followed, pretty much every single evening we were grabbing drinks, we were talking shop. And the conversation evolved from catching up about our personal lives. Then Rahul started telling me about this idea he had for rebuilding email for the billion professionals. And I wasn't thinking about fixing email. I was really interested in the productivity space. But Rahul really is captivating when he was telling me about building something that will save folks time, that's delightful for folks to use. Search is a first-class experience. Design, it's just minimal. It gets people into a particular flow state. So I was incredibly intrigued. But what he said next fundamentally shifted my thinking. He was like, Vivek, it's unlikely that folks like you and I are going to find solutions to famine or war. It's unlikely that a Vivek or a Rahul will find a cure for cancer or AIDS or take mankind to Mars. But what we can do is create tools for people that are. Tools for that cancer researcher, that high school teacher, the next Elon Musk, whoever it is, help them move 10x faster, be 10x more productive, be 10x more brilliant. That's our contribution to society. That's how we are going to level up mankind, is by augmenting people's natural capabilities with the software and tools that we create, give them superpowers, and make them superhuman. And that's where the name of the company came from. And when he said that, it was like the proverbial mic drop. I got goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps right now, just reliving it. And I saw the next 10 years. I was like, holy shit, this is a once in a generation type company. I've been a student of the game for now 15 years. And I've studied companies that have failed and succeeded. I've experienced that myself. And this was one that absolutely stood out. And Rahul just had incredibly strong founder market fit. He obsessed about this problem for years, from his reported days and through LinkedIn. And so we joined forces in May 2015, and here we are today. And by the way, quick disclaimer: appreciate the praise. I wouldn't say we master the customer experience. I think we've done a good job for our business, and there's definitely a lot more we can do to improve. But I wouldn't say we mastered. I think that's generous of you to use that.
You guys are savants, man, compared to us. I had a long chat with Rahul. It was a very popular session. And a couple of the things he talked about was game design and how you've sort of introduced that into the product. And one of the things he touched on, which I fundamentally believe in, everyone talks about acquisition, customer acquisition, and they talk about retention. But it's like dating, right? You don't go to a bar and ask somebody to marry you right away. You ask them for the number and you optimize for the next text and the call. And
right.
One of the things we had a long conversation on was onboarding is a key step between a customer who signs up and a long-term raving fan. And you guys do a phenomenal job on onboarding. And in fact, it's a departure from every other SaaS company in the price range that I've seen. You charge a $30 a month product, but you concierge onboard everyone. That is just unbelievable. And he said something like, I think we can get to 100 million in revenue with 70 onboarding specialists. So walk us through that, like those kinds of things that are like, there's this common question that Peter Thiel asks, is like, what's the one truth that others disagree? So you guys have a lot of truths like that you guys have, like, challenging the norm. So, through your experience, just walk us through why. Let's start with onboarding, I guess.
Yeah.
Why did you guys choose that path?
Yeah, great question. We did not set out to do these one-to-one onboardings when we started the company. We were expecting, like anyone who is building software, to have, especially at the time in 2015, to have a self-serve experience. Folks would download, folks would sign up for Superhuman, and they would adopt and use the product. So we spent about a good year and a half building Superhuman, and ultimately we got version 0.1 in the hands of about 50 or 100 or so customers. And some of these included investors, these were friends of ours. They weren't very retained on the product. And we were like, what's going on here? Churn rates were higher than we expected. We were asking NPS related questions. Our NPS score at the time was, I think, like 30. And so we dug in, we looked at the data, we talked to these customers, looked at the qualitative, quantitative data, et cetera. And we stumbled upon two fundamental truths. The first was that we had to rewire how people did email. We're building a product that has developer-related derivatives or primitives, around keyboard shortcuts, a command line interface. We were building something that wasn't Gmail. And so we had to educate and train these folks. It's like someone who's never learned how to properly work out or have proper nutrition. They should probably work with a personal trainer, at least for a few sessions, to help them build good habits. And pretty much everyone has bad habits around email. You don't take a class on it in college, you just adopt it. You probably download different apps and extensions on top of email that you hear from friends and colleagues, but pretty much everyone, including myself, developed really bad habits around email. So that was the first learning. That was the truth, so to speak. And then the second was that we were really one of the first companies back in 2015, 2016 that did really emphasize this command line interface approach for SaaS software. Command line interfaces have been, originated with IDEs and whatnot, but we brought it to SaaS, and we had built all these bells and whistles under the hood. And so folks were missing out on all the goodies that we had built. They would, on a self-serve basis, use Superhuman and be like, there aren't any features. What's going on? Where are all the buttons? And it's kind of like someone who has a driver's license. They see a Tesla. They're like, you don't need to show me how to drive a Tesla. I know how to drive a car. I have my license. And they sit in the Tesla. They're like, I don't know how to do anything here. I know when I first sat in a Tesla, I spent 30 minutes looking at a YouTube video, sitting in the driver's seat, figuring out how to do the basics with a Tesla. I wish someone would have shown me. So we took those two learnings, we combined it together, and we're like, you know what? We're going to do one-to-one onboardings with each of these customers. And at the time, it was myself and Rahul. We did about the first 40 or 50 onboardings together. We would go to these people's offices, or they would come to ours. Since we were targeting a particular persona, these were investors, these were founders, these were executives, VCs, angels, etc. And so we would show up to their office, and by the way, very quickly, very early on, when we started taking this approach, we realized we need to build rapport with these individuals who are taking an hour out of the day, in some cases even an hour and a half. And so Rahul would say, hey, Vivek, we're going to onboard these 3 people today. I'm like, great. I would then search social media, check out their Instagram, their Twitter, et cetera. Look for keywords around, are they a whiskey drinker? Do they drink wine? Do they like craft beer? And I would go to the liquor store every day, and I would pick up liquor, a bottle of whiskey for this person, a bottle of red wine for this individual, a bottle of craft beer for this person. And we would show up to their offices, and we would ingratiate ourselves. We're like, thank you so much. And, here's a bottle of alcohol. They're like, oh, wow.
For a $30 a month product that was probably then maybe free, or you were...
No, we were charging $30 a month from day one for every single customer, the very first customer. The only folks who get it for free are Superhuman employees. And not even our investors get it for free. They have to pay for it. And so, yeah, that was, I guess you could call that our customer acquisition cost at the time. It's like investing in this, in alcohol. And so we would show up, and, it was important that they are receptive to building a connection and a relationship with us. And I'll explain why that was important. So we would sit next to the customer. I would sit on one side, Rahul would sit on the other side. I would take copious notes, and he would do the discovery. He would see their behavior, their patterns around email. And he's like, okay. And he was cataloging everything in his head. He was identifying what was important to this customer, what wasn't important, and what to show, especially with Superhuman. For example, we built a feature called Instant Intro. Every single investor loves this. Investors get tens, I don't even know, like at least 10 intros a day from folks. And they have to go through the rigor of putting one person in the BCC, putting the other person in the 2, thanks so-and-so to BCC. And you do that so many times, it just becomes a tedious task. So we built Command-Shift-I. You just mash that, and it actually will automatically do all of that for you. So we knew that if we show that to investors, their eyes would glow and they'd get really excited. So Rahul would be like, great, now that I kind of understand how you do email, let me show you Superhuman. And so he got this down to an art and a science where he would show them Superhuman, and we knew exactly, over time, we knew exactly at what points they would get emotionally triggered, they'd get really excited. And so from there, he would migrate over their workflows that they had in Gmail into Superhuman. And then we set them up for success from there on out. And at the time as well, we would also slap them on the wrist. So we would see that they're using the trackpad and their mouse. We're like, hey, let's actually try using the keyboard shortcut. Let's get in the habit of using the keyboard shortcut. Right. And so we were training them, we were coaching them at the same time. There were folks who were, after the onboarding, they were about to churn from the product maybe a few days later. But it was that social connection that they had with us ingratiating ourselves and, giving them a bottle of alcohol, as crude as that example is. They were like, I'm about to churn, but Vivek and Rahul, they're such great guys. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna stick it out for another day or two. And that time we fixed that bug, we fixed that issue that they had, and they ended up being retained on that particular product. And so we took that learning around that experience. We looked at that cohort of folks that we onboarded versus those that we folks that were self-serve on Superhuman, and we saw that retention rates skyrocketed, churn plummeted, NPS doubled to about 80. And so we were like, okay, we just unlocked some magic here. And I'm a big believer that a startup at the end of the day is a series of experiments to unlock user psychology. And we did that in the form of this onboarding experience. And from there, our head of growth, Gaurav, took over. He did about 400 plus onboardings over the span of a couple months. We then started to build out a team around this, initially generalists, but then we started to laser focusing on onboarding specialists. And Rahul's absolutely correct. We've done the math. There's actually a very scalable way for us to build $100 million a year revenue business by doing these onboardings. Not every company can do this, by the way. It's really a function of the product. It's a function of the lifetime value. It's a function of the price point. So, but it definitely works for us.
Definitely. And, this is interesting. It's like, would you say Superhuman is a product-led company? Because I'm having this debate right now, or is it hybrid? Because of these manual elements that actually add a wow factor. And by the way, before you answer that, hopefully you can use Drizzly right now in the in the COVID era to ship wine and whiskey to you.
Yeah, exactly. It was important for us that we brought the bottle to them.
100%.
Right? Like we're like, here. Now you're right. In a COVID era, we actually no longer do this. We stopped this practice after a couple hundred onboardings. Not everyone drinks alcohol, right? No, but that was important for us to front load with creating rapport and with creating delight and giving gifts and whatnot. Yeah, I would say we're definitely more hybrid. If we were a product-led company, I think there wouldn't be no real need for having this one-to-one onboarding. And I would say we're definitely more hybrid as a function of the space that we're operating in and the type of disruption that we're trying to create with a customer and user's behavior. I don't recommend every company do these one-to-one onboardings. I see this in the market. I actually tweeted about this. I'm like, you're actually going to piss off your users if you're not changing fundamentally ingrained behaviors and you're kind of forcing them to go through this onboarding. There's definitely exceptions if you're doing discovery in the beginning and you're trying to kind of understand what customers want, need, and how they feel and their pain points. But if you're not changing behavior with your product and you're pushing folks through this flow because Superhuman did this, I think it's just reckless and it's not smart. And so kind of thinking deeply around why did Superhuman do this? Okay, got it. They do this. They're doing this because they have to change people's behavior, and humans suck at changing their own behavior. They need help, and so that's why they did that.
I'm a big fan of Nir Eyal in the book Hooked. Is changing behavior to get people hooked, but changing behavior is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
And if you want somebody coming onto your new product, whether you're product led and doing it through the product, or you're sort of hybrid where you're doing manual onboarding, I think the key thing is getting people to that moment of delight and time to value. And you guys are doing a great thing. We're a product that's changing behavior in a way. We get companies, government incentives, funding, and right now they work with accountants to do it, and it's a lot of manual work. And we need to onboard people to show them the value and explain them the tax law, right? So those things where it works, but our ACVs are $20,000. It's not
right.
It's hard with a sort of $360 product. Now, do you find that sort of companies, you do these manual onboardings one by one, but do you guys have an enterprise strategy where you see multiple people from an organization signing up and then you sort of take those leads and hit them up top down from sales. Do you have that model?
We're actually now building out that model. That's our Act 2, Superhuman for Teens. Do you have a bug in our office? Have you been listening in on our conversations?
I can look at products and I can sense the direction. I'm a big fan of you guys, so I can tell.
Yeah. So email is inherently a single player and a multiplayer experience. And so we started with single player. We want to nail that and get that right, especially for a particular type of persona. Superhuman is not for everyone. I'll say that. If you're sending, a couple emails a day, or you're in your inbox only 5 minutes a day, then you're probably better off using Gmail. But if email is your life, if you're spending at least a few hours a day, you greatly benefit using something like Superhuman. And so our approach with onboarding and picking customers, especially, we have everyone go through and fill out a pre-onboarding survey. Now, folks from the outside who don't really dig in to understand why will get upset. They will like, Superhuman is just intentionally creating friction. It's like, no, the reason why we do this is because in the beginning, we onboarded friends, family, investors, folks that were referred. And we saw that, people who have an Android phone end up churning out much higher than folks who don't, because we don't have an Android app. We're actually building that out right now as we speak. They use Gmail on Android. They use Superhuman on web, desktop. If you create a draft in Android, it doesn't sync to you create a draft in Gmail, it doesn't sync to Superhuman, vice versa. There's all these complexities. So it's things like that. If someone was on a unified inbox workflow and we onboarded them, they end up churning out, a day or two later. So they waste our time, they waste their time. It just ends up not being a good use of anyone's time, really. And so for us, we like to information gather up front, and we use that and we fine tune and we tweak the algorithm, so to speak, of who would be product market fit with our product based on where the product is today and what we have. And we then pull folks off of the wait list based off of that. Now, when we pass this product market fit threshold, this 40% very disappointed, we end up open sourcing this engine and framework around this. We saw word of mouth activity really pick up. So our wait list was in the thousands, tens of thousands, and it very quickly ballooned. Is the folks who were super delighted about Superhuman and the product, the average Superhuman customer referred 4.2 additional customers. And so it was very much a word of mouth driven activity. And the wait list just kept growing and growing and growing. And we were starting to pick off folks who were product market fit and a good fit based off of how they answered the pre-onboarding survey. But then we started to realize that, those that were actually referred by those that were existing customers that were delighted ended up being more retained, ended up being delighted as well. And so those were individuals that we brought onto the product. If you were referred and you based on your pre-onboarding survey, we thought you'd be product market fit with a product, then we would prioritize and bump you up the wait list and onboard you accordingly. So that's been the approach with single player with B2C. With B2B, it's interesting. We definitely see companies where we have thousands of companies, thousands of unique domains on Superhuman, where there'll be, one or two seats at a company to, I can't name the names of these companies, but there's 100 seats, there's a couple hundred seats, there's 50 seats. And we definitely see that companies that have more than X number of seats where those people are delighted about the product and they use the product pretty religiously, there's a higher likelihood that their colleagues, their coworkers are more likely to get not only onboarded on Superhuman, but retained on Superhuman. And so we're definitely starting to develop a strategy around that as we speak.
That's awesome. And I think as this expands, you'll probably have evangelists and ambassadors in the community answering your support questions and onboarding people because they love it so much. Like, there are products that I use and I'll just onboard friends if they have issues because they don't have concierge onboarding like Superhuman, right?
Yeah. But it's interesting in that we've done discovery. Rahul and I did some discovery in Q4 of last year. And this is an exercise in going from single player to multiplayer, going from selling a product to individuals to selling to entire teams and companies, which is we're at that inflection point. And so in Q4 of last year, we had about 40, 50 conversations with companies where it was pretty much at the C-suite level. We knew those folks, we had relationships, they were friends of ours, friends of the company, and they had multiple employees using Superhuman, and those employees were very retained and delighted around the product. And we really started to dig in, and we saw that there was actually a pattern of consumption and usage of email within an organization. So our thinking was, okay, everyone within a company is going to use email, right? Like this makes sense to sell into a company. But then we saw that there are three major cohorts. The management layer, who we initially went after, they do email. We were product market fit with them. People who do emails for their jobs, sales, recruiting, success support. There are so many other products out there in the market that their needs were currently being satisfied. And then folks who don't really do email, engineering, ops, design, et cetera, they really don't have any needs and wants. They use things like Slack. And so we saw these three major buckets, and that's part of our strategy right now, is figuring out how do we get to product market fit with these three buckets in order to be product market fit within an entire organization.
You guys have like interesting ways to calculate product market fit, right? Like, and that's the most important thing. And I guess one of the key indicators of product market fit is retention. How did you calculate product market fit?
Yeah, great question. So I came off of my second company, not get to product market fit, had to shut it down. I shed tears. I went through depression, like months of depression. I carry this chip on my shoulder. I'm like, I'm never going to go through this experience ever again. I'm going to prioritize this. And I'm a pretty active angel investor in every single pre-seed seed startup I talk to. I'm like, effing focus on product market fit. Nothing else matters. Stop bloating your team. Stop doing this. Just focus on product market fit. When you focus on product market fit, opportunities open up, and then you can start to build the other boundary conditions of the business. And so going into Superhuman, we had built this product. The self-serve experience wasn't resonating. We started approaching this one-to-one onboarding concierge approach. And we were looking at the retention numbers. We're kind of scratching our head of like, how do we know when we're at product market fit? All the literature and content that was out there were all lagging indicators. Like, when you get to product market fit, when investors beat down your door, journalists are trying to get a story, customers are pulling product out of your hands faster than you can give it to them. And that wasn't helpful. Like, it's like, great, thanks. Like, how do I get there, right? And so one day Rahul came to the office and he's like, check out this really interesting insight and learning from Sean Ellis. And Sean, he's OG, he's a guru. I highly recommend folks look him up, Sean Ellis. He consulted and was early at companies like Eventbrite and I believe Dropbox. I'm pretty sure he was like one of the first growth marketers and may have even coined that term. And so Sean, he had done a lot of research working with hundreds of companies, and he found that asking a question that was orthogonal to NPS, and the question was, how disappointed would you feel if this product were no longer available, or you can no longer use a product? The options being very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed. Asking that question, he saw that there was some magic that happened when 40% of respondents answered very disappointed. If you're able to sustain that, and you have a statistically relevant number at the beginning, you're able to sustain that, then by all definitions, from Sean's point of view, start to invest in the boundary conditions of the company and really start to scale. And so Rahul shared this, and I was like, this is really interesting. And the product market fit engine that we ended up open sourcing first round, ended up distributing that content on our behalf. You can find publicly available. It comes across as incredibly graceful, but I can assure you it was very iterative, and we were banging our heads against the wall. We were kind of like pulling our hairs, like just trying to like figure this out. Especially if you pull back the curtain to the sausage factory, you kind of see like how this was working. It wasn't simple and fluid as it comes across in the literature and the content that we open sourced. And so we took that question, and then we also asked other questions, like what type of people do you think would benefit most from Superhuman? What is the main benefit you receive? How can we improve the product today? And so in the beginning, when we started asking this question, we saw that 22% of folks answered very disappointed. And we're like, okay, let's actually distill out folks who were not high expectation customer, the power user that we want to go after. Our power user HXEs or founders, CEOs, investors, executives initially. And so we started filtering out data from like the business development manager, the marketing manager, recruiter, software engineer, et cetera. And so that 22% became 32%. And we looked at that persona, and we looked at folks who answered somewhat disappointed. And we took those individuals that answered somewhat disappointed, and we looked at what was missing for them in the product, like how can we improve the product? And that helped dictate our product roadmap. And we took the very disappointed and we looked at what was the main benefit they received from Superhuman, and most answered around speed and design and search, offline mode, et cetera. And that covered the other 50% of our product roadmap. So 50% of our product roadmap was what was the folks who answered very disappointed, what delighted them about the product. We doubled down on that. The other 50% was the folks who were almost very disappointed, who were somewhat disappointed, what was missing for them. And so, example at the time was an iOS app. We didn't have an iOS app when we first built Superhuman. And so we took that, we're like, okay, we're not gonna build in parallel. We're not gonna build in series, we're gonna build in parallel. And that's what we did. And we tracked this number, and today we still track this number. We ask this question to every single person who gets onboarded. They get sent this survey, we call our satisfaction survey, about a week and a half, 2 weeks after they've been onboarded. And we track this pretty religiously on a weekly basis. And so that 22% jumped up to 32%, and then it became 40%, 50%, I think it even hit 60% at one point. And absolutely, when we hit that 40%, there was something there in the ether that just completely changed how folks started to perceive the product. We started to like get the right puzzle pieces in place around, we have the desktop app, the iOS app, these particular experiences around email and productivity, and just started to click. And the market was responding very favorably accordingly.
Definitely, that's fantastic. And sometimes some would argue that is survey really the indicator, or are there other leading indicators as people use your product, right? Because it's not sort of a one and done where I send a survey maybe after X months of them starting. Sometimes it's like, are there some leading indicators as they use your product or engage with you? What are some leading indicators to long-term engagement and retention that you guys recommend tracking?
Yeah, so the very disappointed metric, internally we call it the VD score. The VD score is absolutely this leading indicator. The referral activity, so we made it incredibly easy for folks to refer. We built it into the product. You can hit Command K and type refer. And so we made it frictionless. And we saw that you start to refer X number of people. Okay, that's a good leading indicator that there's going to be sustained engagement on the product. We also saw, it was a really interesting stat. It was after someone's been on the product for a week and a half, and they send 90% or more of emails through Superhuman, they're essentially going to be a lifer on the product. And so for us, we took that and we were like, okay, these folks, they were at 70%, they were at 80%. Let's look back. Let's see what happened. How come they didn't get to that 90% threshold? Internally, we called, if you send 90% or more of emails through Superhuman versus using Gmail or another app, we call you delighted. This person's delighted. And so we're like, why are these folks not delighted? And we reverse engineered, we look back at the data, and that's when we realized, okay, we're actually seeing a pattern. Like this onboarding specialist is consistently seeing that the folks that they onboard are at 60, 70, 80% delighted. All right, let's spend some extra time in re-educating the onboarding specialists, retraining them and leveling them up so that they can get their customers that they onboarded to that 90% threshold.
How do you guys think of product metrics as it ties to customer experience? Like how often do you guys watch? What are your top 3 product metrics that you look at maybe week on week or month on month? Is there sort of like a North Star?
Yeah, we track NPS, we track the product market fit score, we track the delightedness internally. I would say those are the major ones that we look at. From a quantitative standpoint, we look at a high level, at an aggregate point of view, how many emails folks send, what % of emails that they're sending. I think there's definitely room for improvement for us. We're starting to track time spent in email. Are they spending 30 minutes a day? Are they spending 3 hours? We see this almost like a skewed Gaussian distribution or a bell curve, where there are folks, the majority of folks spend 3 or 4 hours a day, but we have folks who are spending 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day in Superhuman. Like when we're trying to imagine that, we're like, okay, they get up, they're on their phone, they're commuting. This was especially true pre-pandemic. They're commuting, they're on their phone, they're at their office, they're on the desktop, etc. And then qualitatively, we track all of this data. We set up Airtable as our CRM. It's still to be seen if we're going to continue to use Airtable, because I think we're probably one of the biggest users of the particular tier that we're on for Airtable. But we've cataloged and tracked, I want to say it's close to 60, 70,000 pieces of feedback from customers over the past X number of years. And we capture everything that gets sent to hello@Superhuman that is a feature request, a bug, a want, a need, whatever it is. We capture that and we tag it accordingly with this person wants this particular feature, this person is reporting this particular bug. And then we have, I saw a question come in around tools and tech stack. We use Zapier to have GitHub talk to Airtable. We built our own internal tools to very quickly capture this data. We use Help Scout as our customer support platform, messaging platform. So the tooling is absolutely important and crucial for us. I was actually our first customer delight person. At the time, Rahul was handling 5-10 emails a day. And then I took over and scaled it to about 100 emails a day until we brought in dedicated folks to run with this. And I set up our Airtable. I was like, okay, I want something that's dynamic. I want something that can work with Zapier, and set up an Airtable. Over the span of 1 week, I retroactively tagged 9,000 emails. I pulled some all-nighters to kind of pull that off. And I showed the team, I'm like, hey, look, we're gonna use Airtable. Here's how we're gonna approach this. And surprisingly, that scaled, but I think we're gonna hit a point pretty soon that we might have to look for some other solutions to improve and scale the customer experience.
Awesome. And then, getting back to the conversation around the 4 pillars, let's summarize for me, what are your 4 pillars of awesome customer experience?
Finding the right, picking the right company value. I think first and foremost, I think this is an exercise that every company should go through in the early days. So with us, we had the first week that we started the company, I told my 2 co-founders, Rahul and Conrad, I was like, hey, we should come up with a set of values for the company. And so we came up with a set of values that included be brilliant, be swift, break the rules, be resourceful, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward a few years later, we had a couple folks on the team be like, hey, we don't really break the rules. Like, some of these values don't really speak to who we are. So we had all hands and we went through our 6 values and we got a lot of feedback from the team. We then stumbled upon this book called The Advantage by Robert Lencioni. Highly recommend everyone get this book. Get The 5 Dysfunctions by Robert Lencioni and get The Advantage. Those are like 2 of my favorite business books. And so there's a chapter specifically around the values within a company. And so from Robert Lencioni's point of view, there are aspirational values, there are permission to play, there are accidental values, and there are core values. The most important were the core values. These values separate this is what separates you from other companies. Like, you would almost, Patrick Lencioni, thank you, not Robert. Thank you for folks in the audience. Yes, Patrick Lencioni, not Robert. And so the core values, you would do this to a fault. You would even compromise revenue for these values. You do this better than 99% of other companies. And so for us, we went through a process where every Thursday morning, we met up at a cafe in San Francisco. This is amongst the leadership staff group and the founders. And over the span of 2-3 months, we went through a very iterative process. In the beginning, it started with identifying past and present team members who embody the best about the company, the past team members who weren't a good fit. We discussed the leadership group ourselves, embodied these values, and then we started to isolate these core values, and we started wordsmithing. And what ended up bubbling up to the top was create, delight, remarkable quality, and be intentional. And that dictated how we treat each other, how we treat customers, how we think about and build product. It really has permeated the entire company. We don't have customer support, we call it customer delight. We have a metric that we track called delightedness. We build product towards remarkable quality. Other companies might have speed as a core value, but for us, we're not going to Well, it's important to be swift and move quickly and to focus on speed. It shouldn't be at the cost of creating a remarkable quality experience and being intentional and so forth. And so this was especially true when I was, juggling recruiting and HR and ops and being our first customer delight person. And I remember Rahul pulled me aside one day and over dinner, he gave me some pretty stern feedback. And he's like, these emails that you're sending do not adhere to our core value of remarkable quality. I was like, look, I'm getting 100 emails a day. I just need to move quickly. He's like, we're going to move slow if we need to. Like, let's go super deep with every single email. And at the time I was averaging about 5 minutes per email, 5 to 7 minutes. And I ended up started spending like 10, 20 minutes per email and just really making it really delightful, these interactions with customers. It's super important because our customer delight team is an integral part of the customer experience and the customer journey. And this is part of our brand. This is, I think, what separates us and what we especially value. And so that was an example of something that really kind of stemmed from focusing on our core values. Highly recommend every single company create space to figure out what your respective core values are. It will pay dividends later on. So that's part one of it.
I like how you guys measure people against those.
Absolutely. It's our core values are on our website. It's on our jobs page. It's on every offer letter. We talk about it during all hands. We reference it at any moment, any occasion possible, right? So incredibly important. The second pillar is being intentional with engaging with customers. In our pursuit around discovery, we really went deep, and this is really a testament to Rahul. He's probably one of the best product people I've ever come across. I would definitely rank him like top 5 in the world, and in terms of not just his ability to understand what customers want and need, but how they feel. And he has so much empathy, and so we're really intentional around. And again, that's a company value, but we're really intentional around really just in that particular pursuit. And we're really intentional in the pursuit around product market fit. It wasn't haphazard. It was very well, we put a lot of energy and thought around it. So I would say that's probably the second. And then finding the right price point is super important, part of the customer experience. If you have a product that's free, the customer is likely the product. If you have a product that's priced too low, you're going to potentially bring on a lot of fair weather fans, and you're not going to, it's going to be a bit hard to discern folks who are diehard versus folks who are not, which is really important when you're in the 0 to 1 stage. And you really want to focus on who the power user is going to be, who's going to be the one who's going to stick with a product as you continue to build. And then if the product is priced too high, you're going to filter out folks. You're going to alienate, you're going to potentially miss out on capturing the right type of customer for your company. And so for us, we ran what's called we took the Van Westendorp pricing analysis. You can Google this and find more details on this, but there are definitely different ways to approach pricing. And in the beginning, we painted a picture around what Superhuman was. We didn't have the product at the time ready to show. We showed wireframes and mock-ups, and we had copy around this is the type of experience, this is the type of value you get. And then we asked folks for a question, essentially at what price point, based on what you've heard and what you've seen, at what price point does this feel expensive? At what price point does this feel cheap? At what price point do you get value? At what price point do you not get value? You get 4 data points per customer, you plot it on a graph, and you start to see these zigzagging lines in this zone emerge in the middle. And for us, it was between $20 and $50 a month. We had some people answer, I would spend $5 a month for this. We had other people answer, I would spend $200 a month for this type of experience. And so we saw $20 to $50 emerge, and we're like, you know what, let's put it somewhere in the middle. And we anchored around $30-ish a month. We picked 29 because that's the psychology around pricing. You want to lower it by a penny or a dollar, so it has a 9 at the end. And so Superhuman was $29 a month for a period. And then Patrick Campbell from Price Intelligently and Profit Well, that guy's a pricing guru. Highly recommend signing up for his newsletters and content. He chatted with us. He gave us pro bono advice. He's like, guys, you guys are building a premium luxury product. They don't end with a 9, they end with a 0. And we're like, oh, that's right. He's like, just increase it by $1. And so we ended up pricing at $30 a month, which, by the way, works out beautifully because there are essentially 30 days in a month. And whenever we get pushback from customers, they're like, oh, why would I spend $30 a month? I can get it for free from Gmail. And we're like, well, you could also, I'm sure, get a free butter knife to try to cut a piece of steak, or would you rather pay for quality steak knives, especially if you like to eat steak? And it's only $1 a day, right?
What's your favorite steak knife?
What's that?
Said what, you like eating steak?
Don't tell that to my wife. I need to cut down red meat. But it's $1 a day. And when you reframe it that way, they're like, oh, okay, yeah. And then they're like, how much do I spend at Starbucks? How much do I spend on this Uber ride? And it's like, do you value your time? Like, if you're saving about 30 minutes to an hour a day using Superhuman, which is anecdotally and qualitatively what we say from our customers, then $1 a day is a steal.
You guys have a productivity dashboard that shows them time saved compared to their historical data, because you access all of their Gmail and you know how much time they spend. That would be awesome.
That is something that we are very seriously thinking about. Yeah, awesome. And showing that. And so that's absolutely the a part of the pillar. And then the other part is really just completing the customer life cycle. It's everything from the first touch point with our customer acquisition team to making sure that this person is the right fit for the product. We're not going to waste their time. We think Superhuman is not the right fit for them. And then they engage with our customer delight specialists, who then, after they've onboarded, our onboarding specialists, who then during the onboarding show them how they can actually interact with our customer delight team, our customer support team, email hello@superhuman, for example, and they then hand it off to our customer delight team, who then is the more towards the tail end of the customer life cycle, where they have these high touch point experiences over email, and something that we're continuing to build towards having other types of interactions. We're considering chat, we're considering live, we're considering one-to-one. But yeah, that's very much part of the journey. And then we as a team, as a company, we engage with our customers on social media. We don't have a dedicated social media manager. We have Vivek, we have Rahul, we have Ryan, we have Laurel, we have Matt, we have folks like, we kind of give best practices for here's how you want to engage with folks on social media. And if there are customers or potential customers, we absolutely will jump in and engage. And you'll see a ton of emails, or ton of tweets, where I'm responding to someone's tweet about Superhuman, or maybe they're upset, and I'll tag various folks on our team to kind of jump in and help out. And so it's an all hands effort for sure.
Definitely. Now, talk about this customer delight team a little more. It's different than your onboarding specialists, right?
Yeah.
What do they do, and how does this tie into creating raving fans? You guys have got dude, people are proud to use Superhuman. They wear it like a badge of honor. And whenever I talk to anybody, if they're a Superhuman user, it comes up in conversation. It's like, I don't know, man, like you guys are creating a movement based on email, and that is hilarious. It's like you and Rahul are the Mahatma Gandhi of tech or email. It's beyond, when you have a mission and everyone aligns with your mission turns into a movement. And what's bonkers to me is you guys have created a movement around email, and I'm so fascinated by it. Like you started the conversation, we're not curing cancer or anything else, but we're enabling people to do it. How do you get so many people to connect with your mission where I see it turning into a movement? You probably need a community manager down the road, or maybe you already have that person.
Yeah, we're trending in that direction. Look, at the end of the day, we obsess about, and I don't use that word lightly. We truly do obsess about customers and the customer experience. It stems all the way from picking the right customers in the beginning to how we think about the product. There's this wisdom especially in Silicon Valley, where it's all about acquisition and growth. And for us, it's all about retention. Always about retention. We're now just starting to turn on the acquisition engine. But for us, we had a customer, I won't name who they are, but they're a co-founder of a major fintech company that's worth the tens of billions. And this particular individual churned, and they churned because at the time, this was, I want to say 2017, we failed to send one of their emails. And so we have this metric we track internally called send failure rate. And at the time, it was like 1 in 10,000 emails failed to send for whatever reason. It was like a database issue or whatnot. Now it's like 1 in tens of millions or hundreds of millions of email. We got it down really low. But at the time, he was the one that experienced that, and he churned off the product. And he was like, Rahul, like, guys, like, this can't happen. Like, people's livelihoods are dependent on this. Their jobs are dependent on this. And we took that so seriously that we went into lockdown mode for an entire quarter. We called that quarter Project Trust. And our focus was, we are not going to build features. We're not going to build these things that people want. We're going to focus on reliability, performance, and making sure that we can gain the trust back from folks like that. And, it's that emphasis where, you'll have investors, you'll have folks who external to the company, even our own investors were like, what are you doing? Why are you taking this one-on-one onboarding? Just open this up to everyone, get all these people who are on your wait list. And we're like, nope. And these people were persistent, and we were kind of just like, go away. Like, we're closer to the data. We know what we're doing here. And so, it's that obsession that we have. And, we're fortunate that we are repeat founders. We're fortunate as a result of that, we're able to raise capital. If you raise a little bit amount, it's hard to have that focus without experiencing significant anxiety, but we had a long runway to kind of figure this out. So that was definitely at our benefit. But that definitely plays into this brand that we're building, and we're just starting with respect to our brand. And like I talked about the core values, and it's like picking the right people and bringing them into the company who share those values, who continue to delight. We try to go above and beyond. We're like sending swag now to customers. We're like trying to come up with cool stuff. And, we're just trying to help these people save time. Because time at the end of the day is the most expensive resource. You can't buy time back. And that's why we focus so much on speed. That's why we focus on creating this particular experience, why we invest so much in the onboarding, because we know that if we can get you from point A to point B, you're going to save an hour a day, which means you have more time to spend with your family, your kids, do things that you want to do, side projects, or just work, put in more hours and put in more work, et cetera. And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. And then you asked previously the customer delight team. These are our email specialists. These are people who they dog food the product. We're now using Help Scout because it scales, but in the beginning we were using Superhuman to send all of our emails. These are folks who they have an insane curiosity. I see these customer support emails, and it's like, thank you for filing a ticket. We will respond to you shortly, or we apologize for the inconvenience. And when I started handing off our customer delight that we started to hire, I was like, we're never going to use this language. Like, the language that we should use is, oh my God, I am so sorry. And treat every single customer like they're your best friend or a family member. And so I actually went on vacation for back in 2017, 2018, and I was like, well, what are you going to do with like the customer delight emails? I'm like, we're going to do a rotation in the company. And over the 2 weeks before the vacation, I'm going to sit down with like the 10, 12 people on the team. And this person's going to be responsible for customer delight for one day. This person is going to be responsible for customer delight the next day. And I remember sitting down, and one of our engineers, I was like, how would you respond to this email? And he's like, I apologize for the inconvenience. I'm like, no, pretend you're talking to your cousin. And I knew his cousin's name. And he was like, okay. And I'm like, how would you respond then if you knew you were talking to your cousin? He's like, I would respond this way. I'm like, that's exactly how you want to respond. Like, treat people like they're people. Like, and so our customer delight team absolutely tries to do that. And we don't just, someone's like, hey, I want this particular feature. We don't say thanks. We say thanks, but we're like, that's great feedback. What is it about that feature? We try to go a couple levels deep. And that actually stemmed from Rahul, where I wasn't doing enough of that when he gave me the stern feedback. And he's like, we need to do better, like demand excellence, remarkable quality. And I was like, got it. Went away for the weekend, came back on Monday, had a different mindset shift, and started going really deep. And then we started to implement that across the entire organization.
So one question here, we're almost at the top of the hour. Great feedback here. Say you guys screwed up something for me. right? Hypothetically, like we're working in a different company and I respond like all pissed off that this thing bombed, right? How would you, what would you say if you were customer delight that week? Let's say you were Amazon and you misshipped my package or your FedEx, and I emailed all pissed off. What would you say?
Yeah. So it really depends on the severity and the situation. There are certain emails that we will escalate to our customer delight manager, Annette. There are some that actually gets forwarded to Rahul and he will jump in. I'll sometimes, any email that gets sent to hello@Superhuman, it gets syndicated to the entire company. So every single person at Superhuman has visibility into our customer delight email. So I'll periodically check in and I will see that this email has been escalated to Rahul and he will jump in. But if a customer delight specialist is answering the email, it's, we have a metric internally. I think it's like we're trying to get to 20% of emails responded to in under, I think it's like 5 or 10 minutes. I forget the exact amount. So we try to respond to folks quickly because that's so delightful. You email a complaint or something support related, and then you get a response right away. So speed's important. The second is just empathy. Like nothing infuriates me more when I interact with customer support folks and they are not empathetic at all. And so we try to be empathetic and put ourselves in the shoes of this particular person. And then we seek to understand. We try to kind of gather more information. We will close the loop. We will, if there's a particular issue, we don't just fix the issue. For customers, if there's a particular issue that even if they reported 2 years ago and we fix that issue, they finally got prioritized, we will respond back to the original email, to that original thread and follow up with that particular individual. And so follow-up is super key, whether it's within a few minutes, whether it's a day later, it's paramount for us to build and maintain that trust. And, our goal is, okay, this person is upset and we understand, we get it. Like and maybe we screwed up here. But we're really just at that point, focus on just, maintain that trust with them. And hopefully they'll give us like a second chance and see that, we are humans at the end of the day, behind the screens who are working to improve their lives and make their lives better.
Definitely. No, that is fantastic. What are your top 2 metrics for your customer delight team, or is there?
Yeah, so we're now starting to track, we're now starting to do some sentiment analysis, but email response time is definitely a metric that we track. How quickly do folks respond to emails on our customer delight team across the entire organization? I would say that's definitely one. And then we're experimenting and looking into kind of like the follow-ups. Like if we're engaging with this particular customer, is there one follow-up or is there like back and forth chain? Like, is there like 10 emails within this particular issue or with this particular customer? We're still trying to figure out like, what does that mean? If there's like much follow-up versus little follow-up, and like how should we deal with that accordingly?
Definitely. And I get Rahul's emails as well. I had this question on how do you win rave reviews and make your product go viral, but I think you've outlined all the steps here. If you have great values and you delight your customers deliberately, and that makes you get up in the morning every day and you fall in love with them and make them become successful, the rave reviews and the virality will follow. And I've seen that with you guys. Is that accurate?
I think that's absolutely accurate, right? You're going to have folks external to your company, external to your core team, who are going to push you to focus on growth. And if you're focusing on growth and you haven't really nailed down retention and the customer experience, that's a bad move, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Growth is short term, by the way. It's like you might get the spike and it might appease, XYZ investor on your cap table, but it's not a way to build a sustainable business.
Definitely. I think what's most important is delighting customers and building long-term relationships with them and getting them to the outcome. The growth then will follow. I had a big mistake with my previous company where we focused on growth and got like 15,000 users, but the retention was bad. We ended up shutting down the company. So to summarize the 4 pillars, one was picking the right company values, being intentional when engaging with your customers, meaning from onboarding, delighting them, continuous follow-up, finding the right price point for them so it works, and then making sure you're continuing to delight them across the entire journey, understanding the whole life cycle. And if you work to delight at each phase, then you can build a long-lasting business. Ultimately, if you help your customers become successful, you will become successful. And for growth-related and product-related deep dive, I'm just linking Rahul's session from Traction last year. And he talked about product market fit in more detail and early customer acquisition and so on. I didn't touch on that. Vivek, as you look back on your journey, what do you wish you did more of and what do you wish you did less of?
I wish we figured out this values piece earlier. We did this a few years into the company. I wish, there were a lot of operational pieces that the company needed. And I was our first recruiter until we got to about 25 people. And then we brought on our head of people, Kristen. There's aspects of the company the founders don't need to do. And so I should have brought on a recruiter when we were 10, 15 people. Should have brought on a chief of staff or someone in the ops capacity, like an ops lead, to take this stuff off my plate so I can focus with more of my zone of genius being like external facing and customer facing and whatnot. I would say that those are like, if I could go back in time, I wish I would have done that.
Awesome. And what do you wish you did less? Is it the same? Or
I wish I did less of, speaking about me in particular, and this is more unique to me versus anyone else in the company. My zone of genius is being more around external facing on behalf of the company, with customers, with investors, with sales, et cetera. I wish I did less of the operational, like setting up our parental leave policy, writing that out, or, I was head of HR, I was head of recruiting, I was head of these other functions. And I took it from 0 to 1. And I pride myself on taking anything that doesn't involve writing code or design or, hardcore product management. I'll take that from 0 to 1. But I think the company would have benefited if we had someone who enjoys doing that kind of work and could have scaled that. And so I was putting all of this on my shoulder, and to the point where there were certain, like, employee experience was like, starting to suffer here and there. And I'm just like, okay, let's bring on folks who actually know what they're doing, and who can take this off my plate and scale this way better than I can.
Definitely. I think one of the most important things is to do stuff you love as a founder, especially as a repeat founder. And then the second thing, I think I always say there's a Mahatma Gandhi quote for everything, and more people die of indigestion than starvation, or more companies die of indigestion than starvation. Vivek, it was an absolute pleasure. Maybe we'll meet in Austin when I move there and have some steak, and our wives won't know.
definitely some barbecue for sure.
For barbecue for sure. Thanks so much. I enjoyed thoroughly though. Check out boast.ai/events. We have a lot of awesome stuff coming up. We have a session on category creation with the CMO at Drift, and we have a session on marketing for IPO with the CMO at Marqeta next week. Have a good one. Love and peace, folks.